So I've got my graphic in After Effects. I've scaled it down a little bit, just to S on the keyboard to scale, and I've just moved it just by clicking and dragging so it's slightly off to one side. Now I want to animate this so that it slides onto the screen, and I want it to slide on quite quickly, maybe 2 seconds. So I'm going to go to 2 seconds on my timeline. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit P for position, and I need to set a keyframe to tell After Effects that this is where I want my phone to stop. So if I hit P for position, I'm at 2 seconds on the timeline. I can click the little stopwatch icon next to position, and I'll get a position keyframe. So as I said before, I often like to start at the end of my animations because I often know where I want my graphics to end up. So I start at the end. Now that I've got my end position sorted, I'm going to go back to the start of the sequence. I'm going to click and drag back to frame 0. And in this position setting that I've got for the layer, I'm going to click and drag on the X value, which is the first one, because I just want it to slide in horizontally. And I'm just going to click and drag until my phone goes off the screen. So now I should, After Effects will automatically make a keyframe, so I'll have another keyframe at the start. And if I just scrub through my timeline, I've got my phone sliding onto the screen. Now, if you want to see this playback in real time and get an accurate preview, hit 0 on your keypad, the one on the right-hand side of the keyboard, and After Effects will do a quick preview render, and you'll be able to see it play back in real time once it's previewed. So my phone's sliding in. It's okay, it's moving, which is good, but the movement is pretty kind of linear and boring. It's not very exciting. I'd like a movement that's a lot more dynamic. Maybe there's a lot more sort of contrast in the movement. So there's a couple of things that I can do. The simplest thing that I can do is I can change the easing on the keyframes. So easing is one thing that we talked about near the start of the course. It's one of the principles of animation, and that's this concept that as objects start moving from stationary, they accelerate slowly. They don't move at a linear robotic kind of speed. They slowly accelerate and then speed up, and when things come to a rest, they slow down and then stop. So we get easing of their movement. So I can create some easy easing by selecting this keyframe that is the one representing when my phone's come to a stop. I can right-click it and go to Keyframe Assistant, and I'm just going to set an easy ease keyframe. So After Effects makes automatic easing there, and if I preview that again, I can see on my screen that the phone slides in, and then it just decelerates a little bit before it hits that the point where it stops. That's a little bit better, but it's still not as dynamic as I'd like it to be. So there's a couple of things we could do. One is I could speed up the motion just by making that keyframe time shorter. So that's one way I could change that animation. Another way I can change it is going into its actual speed curves. There's a velocity curve that controls the acceleration and deceleration of any graphics in After Effects. Now the way that we do that is we go to the position setting that's in the layer in the composition window, and there's a little graph icon next to the keyframe stopwatch icon. So I'm going to turn that on, which means this position function, I'm going to see it in my graph view, and then to the right of these collection of icons in the composition view is the actual graph editor. So I'm pretty sure in Cinema 4D we've talked about function curves and changing the speed and acceleration. This is exactly the same thing in After Effects. So what I can see here now is I've got a couple of curves. The y-axis is not, there's no change in that, it just sits the same, it sits horizontally, there's no change because we're not moving in the y-axis at all. But the x-axis we can see there is some change and then some deceleration towards the end. Now After Effects has got two ways of adjusting these curves. One is to get in here and actually create handles that we can drag around and change the shape of these curves. We can also change what's called the speed graph. So just below the graph view, there's an eye icon, and next to that is a graph type icon, and I can edit the speed graph. Now this is a slightly different way of adjusting the timing of animation. It's similar to pulling the easing handles around, but this is actually representing speed rather than an actual position. At the moment, my speed graph, if I look at it, it's kind of a little bit of a hump and it goes downhill. This is showing us that the speed changes quickly and then slows down. What I want to do is grab this right-hand keyframe. It's got a little handle on it. I'm going to drag that to the left, and that's going to radically change the shape of the speed curve. What this is showing me is that the speed is going to go really fast and then slow down and ease in quite radically. And the way to see that happening is to just rewind on your timeline there, hit 0 on your keypad, and we should see now we've got a much more dynamic ease. So the phone kind of zips in really fast and then does a really nice smooth slowdown. So all we've done is change the in-between speed of those keyframes. So the phone is still off the screen at the first keyframe, and then it's on the screen positioned on the second keyframe, but the speed that it moves between those has changed quite a lot. So it accelerates in really quickly and then has a really smooth slowdown. So that's a much more visually interesting way of easing the speed on graphics in After Effects. Now this speed graph I think is unique to After Effects. I don't know if other programs have a speed graph. They generally just have function curves. But it's pretty easy to use, and it gives really nice results. So that's eased. The motion on it is much nicer now. I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to jump out of my graph view. So I'm going to click this graph editor button, and that's my phone animation done for now. So as I said before, the important thing about this is the render out of the 3D program, out of Cinema 4D, was just a phone sitting in space rotating. So if you have a good plan of what you want to achieve with your finished motion graphics project, that can change how you approach doing the animation in Cinema 4D. In my case, I knew I was going to do all the movement in After Effects, so I didn't need to worry and spend any time trying to set keyframes in Cinema 4D. All I needed to do was a turntable of the phone, and then I can do the animation in After Effects. The advantage of this is I can change the speed that that phone moves onto the screen very quickly in After Effects. If I want to change it in Cinema 4D, I could change the speed of it quickly, but then I'd have to re-render the whole thing. So that's a really smart way of working, is making sure that the program that you can adjust the quickest, i.e. After Effects, is where you're doing most of your work.